Assalamu alaikum to all of you. Please give us just a moment of doing some small housekeeping things um, to improve tonight's discussion. So please drop in the comments where you're tuning in from, any questions you have, um, and then we'll get started. And Amber, if there's anything else you would like to say, feel free.
I'm excited for tonight and hopeful for tonight, inshallah, to see what comes of this discussion. And hopefully, there are some points that might resonate, many points that might resonate with the audience and even bring some clarity to the confusion that is out there for many.
Inshallah, I hope so. I hope so, and I hope that people join. Um, so for those that want to call in, the link is there. Amber, if you don't mind, can you put that link in your stories as well? I'm gonna do it on mine.
Is that the
Um,
link that you sent me earlier?
yes, that's the same link for anyone that wants to. The link that I just sent you to join. That's the same link anyone would use if they want to join the live.
Oh, okay. Yes, I can do that now.
Okay, I'm gonna do the same. Okay.
I've shared the link.
Okay, I just shared it as well. For those of you that are viewing, can you drop a yes in the chat if you can hear us and our sound is right? Everything is good. Okay. Now
Is
let
it a
me.
possibility I can view the chat as well, or no, there's no way to do that?
Uh, let me see. I don't think so, unless you had it on your phone opened in terms of the YouTube. Um, for next live, I'll figure that out though.
Okay.
Um, so For those of you that are viewing, I'm going. Just give me 2 more minutes. I just want to get the chat, um, the story, and if not, what we'll do is we'll just read them off. Yeah, we'll just do that because some of them, cause a bit of discomfort.
I'm actually currently still receiving DMs, like in this very moment, uh, responses from the last one that was posted. The last response, well, it was one before it where a brother had responded and then a sister responded to his response. And I have been getting DMs since I posted it.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's start off with that particular comment from the sister. If you don't mind, for the sake of time, can you read that sister's comment? Because I have the brother who commented. I have him here actually. He's joined and he can share his perspective. And if you could, can you ask those that are DMing you, can you send them that link so that they can join the discussion, so that they can share their perspective?
I can. I can almost guarantee that they're probably not going to want to do that, but I will definitely try.
Okay, and that's fine. Or if they can just join in the comments section. But if they could come on, and even they don't need to turn on their camera at all, anything like that. But I think it would be important, um, to have this context, right, and what was said, because we want to approach this from both sides, right? But with that being said, Amber, when you're ready, excuse me, um, if you don't
Okay.
mind, could you read that comment? And actually let me, and then you can give your thoughts on it, and then we'll have the brother come in and let him share his thoughts and maybe context in what his response was.
Okay. So the original comment was, I think I'm at the point where I've given up on Black Muslim men, specifically because not only are many of them adopting the mindset of men like Kevin Samuels, they are putting themselves on a pedestal as high value, quote unquote, high value. Oops. Um, when really we are the ones settling for the likes of them. As a divorcee and mother, that limits my options even further because many men are afraid to take on the additional responsibility of co parenting children that are not biologically theirs. I'm 33 and still hope to marry, but am definitely widening my scope, widening my scope. So the response was, Sister, humble yourself. You are 33 and not as good looking as you were when you were 23. You have children which are a financial burden. Divorced and with kids in the picture means that there is another man in the background, quote, their father, in parentheses. Explain to me why a single Muslim man who has his life in order would want to take all of that on, and you are the one settling. Shocking. Then there was a response after that said, why do Muslim men treat women like a sexual object that has an expiration date? I would, before he joins, I would like to read the response from a completely different sister regarding his response. Subhanallah, we are all way too dunya oriented. Not to mention, to not mention the reward of Allah, question mark. In the times of our righteous predecessors, older women with children weren't looked at as inherently less valuable. We should all reflect on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's marriage with Salama. Their story is so beautiful. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam proposed to Salama, she initially was not into the idea. She said, one, because she was too old, two, because she has children, and three, because she's a jealous lady. And he responded to her in the most beautiful way. He said that he's also old. LOL, and that her family will be his family. And as for the jealousy, referring to her being a co wife, that he will make dua to Allah for her to ease that. He didn't pressure or shame her for not wanting to be a co wife. And after they married in later hadiths, we see that the Prophet ﷺ referring to her children as my son, such and such. This is the path we are supposed to be following. The brother in this post didn't speak at all about the reward with Allah for giving love and provision to Muslim children or the reward for guiding these children positively. No mention of the blessings of having a righteous wife. No mention in having faith that Allah increases your sadaqah with each child. There was no iman in his response. So sad.
And you, what are your thoughts on it when you read it? When it came,
When I
what,
read his response,
yeah.
yeah, so I responded to you about that. And what I gathered from that was, firstly, everyone is entitled to their opinion, right? At the same time, I felt that his comment wasn't helpful, and I felt that the comment was demeaning. I get where he's coming from with a few of his points, but the way that he presented them, I did not feel that they were, I didn't feel that it was necessary. I felt that it was demeaning and disrespectful to an extent to say that you're not the same as you was when you were 23. It's like, why are we doing this? My perspective is, what are we gaining as Muslim women and men for battling each other with this gender war of high value, low value, worth based on age, based on money, based on all these different external materialistic factors, right? I believe that it's not a serving mindset for either man or woman to be looking at one another in this way. If we're talking about marriage, and the topic of the discussion tonight is, why are Muslim women just not interested in getting married anymore? Well, his comment kind of lends to the perspective of why women are shying away from, particularly brothers with that kind of mindset. I'm glad that he's here because he has the opportunity to expound on what he said. It was a small little blurb, but I would like to hear his further thoughts, because in that little comment, I just felt that it wasn't helpful. I also responded to you and said that I'll read my response. It's comments like these that are unhelpful. I find it peculiar that anyone, man or woman, with this mindset would believe that they will ever find or create harmony between the sexes. We are not enemies. My main goal is to help women become more emotionally and spiritually aware, strong, and resilient, with the belief that there are men also doing the work so that we can join forces and end this gender war. I would agree with the point about the vetting process being insufficient. However, many of these ladies are new shahadas with no male representation and unfortunately have been exploited by imams and religious leaders. So, on my end of things, you deal with a slightly different uh, type of woman. Like we both are helping women in different capacities, right? I deal with a lot of new shahadas, and their stories are not the same as a born Muslim lady who might have had brothers and fathers and uncles and everybody in her life, and she just chose to say, well, I'm just going to go marry this guy. She comes from the dunya, a completely different world. She's trying to do things properly, and unfortunately, in many cases, have been exploited by the very people that she was supposed to be trusting. So, again, as we spoke about in a previous conversation, I believe that there's really no context being or even the space for context to come into the discussion. We're just It's just blanket statements in most cases, lumping all divorcee women into the same bucket, and that's not helpful. It doesn't serve anyone at all. So if the purpose is it, to unite and to have healthier relationships and to inshallah get married, obviously you're not marrying the same sex, you're marrying the opposite sex. So we need to have a collaboration and a meeting of the minds, where it seems like to me there's more dissension than anything else. So I definitely love to hear what he has to say. um, And I'd love to challenge him on his ideas, because based off of the one little post, just not really feeling it.
Question, if I can, if you allow it, brother, what were your thoughts about her post?
So what I thought about her, because I know her personally, again, this is a new Shahada lady that I have been involved in her story for quite some time. Her story, um, see, again, this is where context comes in. Because with her particular story, she came into the deen very young, and she's had terrible experiences with the Muslim men that she encountered, particularly imams and the men that she married. And so she is jaded. And while we can talk about healing, which is what we do talk about, and we talk about, moving forward and moving past these things, this perspective that she has when she specifically said that she's not done with marriage, she's just done with black men. Because the type of black men in her locale and that she's been exposed to, unfortunately, were abusive, manipulative, um, really low quality men. So again, that's why I said I can understand the point that someone else made in a different post where they said, the vetting process, whatever. Again, you're talking about a lady who came from the dunya. Marriage wasn't even a factor in her life or any of the people in her lives that she, was connected to before Islam. And then to come in trusting and being open and believing having a certain perception of Islam and of Muslim men, she was taken advantage of. And so I think that personally, the 33 and being a single mom and her fears or worries of the fact that she's getting older, because that is a reality for many women, right? It's like, okay, we know that a lot of men, or we're told, not that this is a known fact, but we are told, and we've even discussed this, that in media, this narrative is being, out there portrayed about men wanting to marry younger women, women without children. So these are the stories, unfortunately, that are plaguing her mind, and she's allowing that to carry her into this negative space. Um, but again, I just want you to understand, I want anyone listening to understand that it's not coming from, she's clearly hurt and she's clearly jaded and she clearly needs um, a shift in her perspective, right? And the story. But it's based on her experiences that has her feeling and believing this way. So that's what I will say about that.
Yeah. So since the brother is here, and I don't know how much time he has, I'll go ahead and bring him up so that he could share his perspective.
Uh,
But I after he's finished, share my thoughts on it because um, I appreciate the sister sharing her perspective. But I think if we're being intellectually honest, then her response, not in a balance, or I'm not trying to put numbers on it, is equally problematic if his response is problematic. Because the same stereotyping that we find problematic, she definitely does.
Now
Like,
with the high value settling for the likes of them,
I,
I'm
I, I,
looking.
I didn't even, I'm not even talk. We didn't even get to that part of the paragraph. Just at the very top, I'm done with black Muslims. Mom,
Mm,
black Muslim. You done with me? I never met you. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, so the point is, I think, and again, I'll stop because I want the brother. I don't know his time frame, but I think a point that I would like to pin for our discussions, and I think I really think sisters need to. It's new for a lot of sisters. Is the understanding that um, if you have spent your time cycling in and out of unhealthy relationships, then you need to have the humility to be able to listen and learn what healthy looks like. And men who are in a healthier space may have a different mindset than the ones that you used to deal with, or what you've constructed in your mind in terms of what they should want and what their standards are. So for me, and again, I'll stop because I could go on. I I, I said this before in different talks, that I think one of the things that can help a sister who is a divorcee get remarried is humility, because humility will allow you to really look at your own baggage and then start dealing with that baggage. And then a part of that is being more mindful, because I would say with this response, this is not constructive at all.
I
If I read something like this, like I even if I was interested, that would I would shut the door on that already.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. And I would have to say though that the majority of the women that I encounter are open to and are and would love to be introduced and in the space of a man that you described, right? The problem with this is when this post was put out, it was kind of like a raw and real first take, right? Like what is your first initial response or opinion based on where you are right now? Not projecting into the future of where you would like to be or where you're aiming at, but where you are currently and your viewpoint as to why you would say I wouldn't be interested in getting married right now. And we haven't even scratched the surface because I'm still getting DMs right now. And the other responses are um the other responses I would love to share. At the same time, this particular person that we're speaking about, um, had she been or if she were to be exposed to a safe man, let's just say a safe black man, right? I don't believe that her response or opinion would have been the same. And that's just that before we hear from the brother. Oh, I can see the chat. Is it
Okay.
it says
Yeah.
assalamu alaikum to all.
Yeah. So that's me putting that in there. And you can see my response in terms of
Yes.
how I'm going to refer to people. So yeah, like for that sister, I don't know if she'll come on, but please understand, sis, there's no animosity, there's no ill will. I just hope that you listen to this and 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 are open to an alternative perspective. And Amber, I'm going to give you a slight nudge, a slight pushback,
Hmm.
slightly.
Okay.
I would agree with you. A lot of sisters would love to be in the presence of the type of men I just described. I would subtly say, though, that some of their actions would say otherwise. And that's that part of the work I do, the part that you do in terms of that healing work, because sometimes our actions can be self sabotaging, even though mentally we know what we should think, feel, say, and do.
Hmm.
Right? That's the habit part, right? Oftentimes we act off habit. Hence, when we have trauma, we have a habitual response to that trauma, to that discomfort. So I'll stop and I'll let the brother come in so that he can share his piece. Um, but we're gonna unpack it a little bit more, and I'm gonna bring the sister on as well.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you hear me?
I can. One second. One second. Let me just send this message to this sister. Okay. Ya Habib, I'm going to refer to you as my brother.
Brother Amin, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Talk to me. Uh, your comment has ruffled a feather or two.
I expected that.
Okay.
It's not really a surprise. Um, I mean, for me, when I read the comment from the sister on the post, I immediately it was just red flags all over the place. So first of all, I would just want to say this whole Kevin Samuels, Andrew Tate, this is all a non-Muslim, the entire environment and the people that listen to them and their audience is a non-Muslim audience. The points that they bring out and the points that they make is catered to that type of community. It doesn't serve us well. It does not help us at all in our community. Therefore, all this man versus woman type of debates that you see on social media are not things that we in the Muslim community should be paying attention to. That's their problem. Leave them to it. But when you have sisters that bring on talking points that you find from these type of communities, they have to be challenged. And when you say that you are settling for these so-called brothers, and you start your comment by saying that I'm done with, I don't speak for the Black Muslim men. I don't. I'm not from America. So the whole thing just screamed red flags to me, and I had to push back.
Assalamu alaikum. So my question for you is, did you, firstly, let's go back to the beginning, because I'm going to start with what I agree with you on. I agree with the Kevin Samuel, Andrew Tate narrative, and their whole thing, their whole platform does not serve us, and it is not our. I've been saying that for so long. Like, we shouldn't
Absolutely.
even be watching these things. I agree with that 100%. Unfortunately, while it was founded and the audience was intended for non-Muslim men, there are a plethora of men, Muslim men, and that I know personally, that watch these things and take it like it is law, like it is fact. They start saying things like, they start rating women from 1 to 10, and the value of a woman is in her age, and is in this, and is that, and if she has, then she ticks down 3 boxes if she has a kid. And there's Muslim men that are in these dialogue that are speaking like these men. So that is where we are gonna that's where I'm going to take a turn and challenge you, because while you're saying that it's not intended for Muslim men, it's not the same as saying that Muslim men are not absorbing this information, and that their minds and their perceptions have not been changed as a result of this messaging, which it has, as well as women on the other side of the aisle who are very, very, very much triggered by this, Muslim women in particular. I've been saying for so long, this is not our argument, this is not our fight. Why are we in the ring? We just need to get out. It's not for us. But we're here now, right? So we have to deal with the realities. We can't deal with idealistic perspectives and idealism. We have to deal with the reality of what we're being faced with. This is a reality. The women and the men, unfortunately, have been consumed by this information, and they're reacting to it. So that's the first point. The second thing I want to ask you is, I get that you wanted to challenge that narrative, but do you believe that when you fight fire with fire, you're going to somehow make it cool down or put it out? Do you think that that is going to be the result, the end result, that if you push back on a sister by then being disrespectful or offensive, that she's going to somehow snap out of it and say, you know what, you're right, I'm too old for this, or you know what, you're right, I'm 33, no one's going to be interested in me anyway, and they're probably settling. Do you think that that was helpful? Genuinely, like, we're being genuine. If we can't be genuine,
I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Okay.
To your first point about Andrew Tate and so on, I would say, look, the issue here is that there is, without a doubt, some validity and some truth in there. Is it all truth? Absolutely not. But if you're a man and you have a prospect, one, which is a female who has children and another female who does not have children, naturally, you are going to gravitate to the one. I'm not saying all men are like this, by the way. What I'm saying is that the vast majority of men are going to gravitate towards the woman that doesn't have any children. Why is that the case? Is the next question. It's because of the complexity that's involved with dealing with a woman that has children. It's not because this woman has kids and as a result of that, I'm not going nowhere near that. It's because there are complexities that are involved. I'll give you an example. If a woman was divorced, the only outcome of that divorce is going to be one of two things. Number one is that this sister exited the marriage as a result of the man being abusive, financially, emotionally, what have you. That tells me that this woman is a very poor judge of character. If she's a poor judge of character and I am now getting myself involved with her as a long-term marriage, because we marry only for being with this person to grow old with them and so on. We don't marry for a short period, right? If she is a very poor judge of character, that tells me throughout the whole marriage, I'm going to have to second guess and also have no trust in her judgments or her advice. Scenario number two is that the sister was actually divorced as a result of the man seeing that she was not a good wife. Never in the history of humanity has a man divorced a woman as a result of her being a good wife. That doesn't exist.
I'm definitely going to push back on you for everything that you said. I'm going to start with the first.
That's fine. That's fine. Let me just finish my point, please.
Okay.
The second issue, right, is the point you made about fighting fire with fire. Now, if you make a claim such as that you're settling for the likes of these kind of men, or you're done with black men, or you're done with black Muslim men, and so on, and you make the claim, you have to be able to back the claim. Someone has to challenge that position on why you hold that view. Then I need to ask you, what do you mean by settling? Settling by definition means that one person is going lower to meet the other person at their level. Now, if I am a single Muslim man, alhamdulillah, I'm doing very well for myself, and my lifestyle is very comfortable, and now I have to take on a woman with other children from another man, whether that man is in the picture or not is going to cause further complications in my life. My life is not complicated at the moment. This man, let's say he's present in the lives of the children. That means there's another person now involved in my relationship that I have to deal with. It's a complication in my life. If that man is not involved in the children's lives and he is absent, at some point there's going to be the eventuality that this man will show up. And when he shows up, he will either stay or then leave very quickly and be absent for a longer period of time. I have to then draw the line and say no, because this is going to cause further emotional damage to these children. The fact that this man now one time shows up and the next minute he's gone. And I have to say, no, this man is no longer allowed to come here anymore, because as the head of the household, I do not want these children to be harmed physically or emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she might have a problem with that because she's going to, from her perspective, she's going to have that maternal instinct to want, regardless of the situation, that her children bond with their biological father. But I am saying that this man has popped in and out of the lives of these children, and as the maintainer and protector of this household, I can't have these children being damaged like this emotionally. So this man is no longer welcome. We are now at an opposite end on how we see things.
Mm-hmm.
This is now causing further complications in my life. Now, from my perspective, why would a single man who has his life in order, which was my simple question,
Mm-hmm.
want to deal with all of these complications rather than having a sister who does not have any children? Who is settling for who?
Yeah,
Let's
but
put things in
I don't.
reality.
So I'm going to start with, alhamdulillah, you have humanity, because your last point that you mentioned about the kids and the concern for the trauma that they could possibly be exposed to because of the in and out of the father. I get that point. I agree with you. Nobody wants that, but I definitely agree with the complication of, the woman and you and her going back and forth now because of this man. I understand that part. I want to say firstly that 9 times out of 10, a single mom is not looking for a man who is single, never been married before, without children. Because as a single mom, there's a lot of things that you have to consider because of your children. Prioritizing the safety, prioritizing the mental and emotional well-being of the children. The maturity level sometimes comes into question. The ability to be responsible for such a heavy load. You're taking on not just the wife, which is a responsibility in and of itself, but you're taking on now children that are not yours. So we get that. As single mothers, we definitely would. The first choice would not be a single man. That's just being honest. Maybe there are some women out there who would like to marry a guy who she would be his first. She would be his first wife, whatever the case may be. But that's not the majority. The majority of women are not looking for a young single man who's never been married before, that has no experience being a father of his own children. So there's nothing to worry about there. The other point is that going back to what you were saying about the two options, I kind of feel like you're leaving a lot out of the picture when you just present those two options as why a woman would get divorced. I'm going to leave that for Brother Nasir if he wants to comment on that. But I don't feel like that is I don't believe, and I'm not hearing that is a fair and balanced assessment of why marriages fall apart, why people get divorced, why a woman would be a single mother or a divorcee. There is so many reasons. There's so many dynamics. I want to ask, I don't want to assume anything. Have you ever been married before?
I have. But this is what I was saying, that when you mentioned that a lot of the sisters who have children and they will be looking for someone who hasn't been married and is young and inexperienced and so on. The fact of the matter is, I think a lot of the sisters, what's missing from them is that they don't actually genuinely understand men's perspective on things.
Yeah.
So regardless, from the men's perspective, regardless of the situation, whether the man has been married or not, whether he has children or not, the viewpoint for a large number of brothers is going to be the same, which is, I am entering a situation. That situation can be one that is going to be a smooth transition from being a single man to now being a married man, i.e. one person and then now 2 people in the household, to 1 person and now another 3 people are added on. So regardless of whether the man has never been married or has been married previously, the calculations from the male brain are going to be the same. So this is the problem. That
Are you speaking for all men or the men?
No, I'm not. I'm speaking firstly for myself, and secondly, for brothers that I know who are either in a similar situation. Alhamdulillah, a lot of the brothers that are in my circle and the brothers that I know are doing very well for themselves.
Mhm.
And therefore,
Would it be
the
safe to say that you see single mothers as a burden?
it's going to take a lot. Let me just put it this way. It's going to take a lot for me and the brothers that I know, right, who are doing very well for themselves and have that humanity, as you mentioned earlier, to have that long vision where you look at certain things from the long angle, rather than just simply being, I married this girl and, you know, she has young children and that's the end all and be all. It's not that.
I'm going to level
It
with
could be,
you and be fair with
it,
you. I totally, I believe that the points that you're making about the male perspective and the situation at large with single moms and just single men, I'm going to level with you. I agree with you. I definitely agree that it is a complex situation. I can see, you know, all of the different challenges that can come about in that. And I don't believe it's just isolated to a single man, because it could be a man with children already, but he himself might not want to take on a woman with more children. I just want to ask though that do you believe or would you be open to considering that this is possibly a limiting belief, right? That if you were to meet the right woman or the a woman who fits all the boxes, checks all the boxes, um, is essentially quote unquote the perfect woman for you, but she has a child, because all single moms are not created equal. Some people might have one
absolutely.
child, may have 5 children, whatever the case may be. But if you so this is the challenge, is that if we're coming out the gate with the mindset that single mothers is just going to present a problem, marrying a single mom, a woman with children is going to be an issue, we're limiting ourselves from the pool of women who are actually high value women. And so this is where that whole high value, low value, you know, part comes into place, because we are lowering essentially the value in our mind for that person, whether it be the black Muslim man, you know, narrative or the single mom narrative. We are lumping and categorizing people and having this limiting belief that is stopping us or preventing us from possibly meeting someone who could be perfect for us.
I agree with you. I do think, first of all, I just want to say that these high value, low value, these are terms that exist in the non-Muslim community, and the
But
main
they've
platform.
made it their way across to us though. And
That's
it's
because the Muslim community, and I'm talking specifically Muslim women here, in my experience, because I've lived in Saudi Arabia and many Muslim countries for about 7 years,
mm-hmm,
and there's a stark difference in how women behave over there, married or divorced, to
mm-hmm.
what I've seen in my actual homeland in London. And you would find that in the Western world, the Muslim women are essentially a product of their environment. They consume this type of media and bring those problems that exist in other communities into our communities. Now, when it comes to, for me personally, I can afford to have a stay at home mom if I wanted to. It's not going to be an issue financially for me. But for me, the problem isn't the finances. The problem for me is my life is not complicated. Would I take on further complications? What are the rewards or the benefit that I'm getting from adding these further complications to my life? Now, if the sister has gone and done the work where she is now in a good place and she mentally understands how to live, work with a man, her husband, that's a completely different story. But when you tell me that you are divorced, 33, with kids, and you are then settling for a man that has the means, or a man full stop, or you're done with black men, full stop, black Muslim men, full stop. Really? Who is settling for who is the question.
Yeah, but
Let's get a reality
you're
check.
putting yourself in the position, which okay, that would be
Do
fair.
you
You're
see
the
what
one
I'm
reading it.
do you
I
see
do see what you're
how
saying.
do you
I'm
see
saying that
how
if
do you see how the male lens views this situation rather than, because I don't know this sister. I don't have to understand or care or know. I'm not emotionally invested in the sister's experience in life.
mhm,
I'm looking purely at the profile that I am seeing. Your words and actions mean things.
mhm,
Therefore, when you tell me that you are settling, given your profile, I'm looking at that and thinking, no, you're not settling for no one. The reality is that whoever takes on this entire package is going down a couple of notches on his lifestyle to maintain this household. He then has to make sure that spiritually, religious wise, that this household, woman with the children, are taken care of, financially, they're taken care of. And then there's the safety element as well. So, if, for example, the co parent or the absent father decides to randomly show up after 10 years, and these children now are in their teens where they're more strong willed and able to make deductive, reasoning and decisions for themselves, where do I stand with all of this? And where does she stand with all of this? If I see, for example, that one of her sons is 19, 20 and is involved in, let's say he's involved in some kind of gang or something like that, I would have to step in as the father and the male and protector of this household to say, look, this young man is a bad influence to his younger brothers. Therefore, he can no longer stay here because he is now an adult and can go and live and work and look after himself. That decision has to be a decision that is for the benefit of the younger siblings, whether it's children I have with her or children that are younger, which are not mine. She obviously having that maternal instinct means that she's going to have a problem with that,
so
right?
you have forethought in this, in all of this. You're looking to the future. You're not just looking to
Exactly.
like in the beginning.
But that's
Yeah,
the thing. Who
And I
marries
think
for
I
the
think
short
that's
term?
the
People
point.
marry for the long term.
yeah, yeah.
I think
I
that's
agree.
the nuance between men that lack resources and are not capable versus men that have resources that have put in the work and that are capable. That
Yeah,
nuance in terms of having a vision, long term thinking, and then looking at what complements versus what complicates one's life, right? Because in order to maintain and continue forward, you want to minimize complication. And so the point, and Brianna, I'm going to bring you in. I just wanted to make this quick point, um, because I think Kevin Samuels being brought up can oftentimes, not all the times, is oftentimes Kevin Samuels, Andrew Tate, all of these sometimes can be distraction techniques, whether knowingly or unknowingly, from the point that's being made. And the reality is, and if you listen to Kevin Samuels, he'll say that a lot of his information he got from those who came before him. And so, why do I say that? The reality is, a lot of men have been thinking like Kevin Samuels prior to Kevin Samuels. He just gave people language and he just had a platform that brought it to a broader audience. But I remember as a kid hearing from the guys in my neighborhood, when you choose a woman that complements your life, that doesn't complicate it. Like that's
Absolutely.
like that's a given. And I think this becomes a point where I encourage sisters to be able to listen to understand what men who have resources are like, because When you have more resources, i.e., you put in the self discipline, the self mastery to have those resources, which are important, which is what you're going to have to afford a woman that does come into your life with children, if you choose that. A part of that is when you have resources, you have the luxury, you have the leisure to decide. Men that have limited resources, they don't really have the luxury to decide. And I think it may sound like a small nuance, but it's a huge difference between men that don't have resources, that don't have the option to choose and the luxury of a plethora of choices, versus men that have the resources and have a plethora of choices. And this very last point, and how this also comes back is because the difference here, and this is an uncomfortable reality, and I'm speaking directly to this sister, and I hope it helps her and any other sister. Uncomfortable. So please, everybody listening, this is uncomfortable. Sis, reality is, as an African American woman, you don't have that luxury to be that bombastic with black men, because you going into other communities, it's limited pickings in that community as well, and their mothers are not screaming to have you marry their sons. Not whether it's a right or wrong thing, I'm just speaking reality of what it is.
Brother Nasir, check your mic. It's scratching a lot.
Oh, sorry, that was me just being a bit animated.
I, is it
That's the
possible
brother.
that I can chime in?
That 1 second, let me just make that point again. That's the brother in me. So it's just to say that one of the things, and this is the point that I was coming to, and this is it's an important point. Brothers that have resources that have gotten older have a pool of options, whether within their own community or other ethnic groups and or other countries. That's not the same for other sisters who are older and divorcees. And that affords a certain luxury with choice. And it comes back to that point that I said in the very beginning. I think some sisters have a difficulty when it comes to accepting that certain men have standards and have choices and options. I don't think they're used to men articulating that or flexing that.
I'm gonna push back
Amber,
on that point.
Please push back, but let Brianna come in because she's
Okay.
been waiting for a long
A
time.
little minute now. Assalamu
A little smidget minute.
Just a smidge. Assalamu alaikum. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes.
So my name is Brianna. I'm 28. I have 2 children, both under 5, and I've been married and divorced before, and more than once. And if there are just a few things I've learned from these things that have happened to me, that I've been through in life, it's that there are always 2 lenses. That's just the reality. There are 2 lenses. No matter how long we've been viewing things to the other lens may be, the reality is that 2 lenses always exist. And if you are a person who is truly interested in the things that we're talking about, growth, having a healthy relationship, longevity, pleasing your Lord within that relationship, then you have to learn to listen to both sides and not just assume that you're listening, but really listen. And with the work that I've been forced in, really, because I didn't imagine myself divorced more than once, 2 kids, single mother, struggling. That's the reality. But being forced in this position, I've also been forced to sit with myself, with myself in ways that most people cannot. Brother Nasir mentioned, and I agree with him. He said that there's a lot of work to be done in regards to humility on both sides. But from a woman's perspective, which is what I'll always be speaking from first. But from our perspective, I can say that we have a lot of work to do on humility. But the thing I'm seeing is that our humility is affected by our nervous system. We gotta start with very, very basics: what we're eating, how we're spending our day, things like that. That leads directly into how we're able to show up with humility or not. When you're able to show up with humility, you can view things better. When we're in these conversations, it's like we almost get sidetracked and thrown off. And I observe. I'm someone I observe, and the when we get thrown off is often because of verbiage. um I've been listening. We've been using words like settling, a burden, um limiting ourselves, things like that. We always get thrown off with verbiage. But let's just take a look at some of the words we've been using. Settling, we were talking about settling. I'm someone I view that word as something positive. I have a choice in this. I can sit here or I don't have to, just like Brother Nasir was talking about. And it's something that you have to view as, okay, the man has that choice, but I also have that choice. And then there's the reality. I have to accept where I am. I have to accept the decisions I've made, the burden that I could very well be to someone who has a choice in who he chooses for his life. But also, I have the ability to view myself. Am I a burden? Could I possibly be a burden? And I have the choice to focus on certain things. Do I focus on the fact that brothers are out here calling single mothers burdens? Or do I focus on the fact that, this is something that I could possibly fall into? Let me do the work on myself. Let me put 100% focus on making sure that I never fall into that. And that's the thing that I'm more interested in. And I feel like sisters often disagree with my point of view because it almost sounds like, well, you're doing that for a man, you know? But that also speaks to this mindset that Brother Hash briefly mentioned. He briefly touched on, but I saw it was gonna get like a boxing match type thing. But there's a reality in things that the man and the woman is saying. But I think that the most powerful thing that women can do is sit within our own reality. Get out of the boxing ring, like Amber mentioned. Focus on ourselves, because there are a lot of hard truths that are just so hard for us to swallow. And it's so evident when we have conversations like this. It's just like we want to think that we are viewing things from a balanced way because we've been through things. Like, I've been through this, I've sat with myself. But the reality is, it's so easy to kind of just get consumed with your own lens. But there are probably a lot of things that I'm leaving off, but this conversation is very, very important. And I think that I'm just happy to be here, able to chime in. But alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Stay on as long as you can so you can continue to chime in.
I just
And
wanted
if
to
you can,
say,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that words mean things, and settling by default necessitates that one person is going down a couple of notches to meet
With that
another
point,
person.
I just want to chime in, just because
Can I
with that
finish?
point, just because with that point, I
You
definitely
can.
left off
I would like to
my
finish.
initial. Oh, go ahead, no problem.
So it necessitates that one person goes down a certain level because you don't settle for something above.
Right.
The other thing is that this is what I mentioned earlier, that a lot of the sisters, the problem they have is they don't fundamentally understand the male perspective and the male lens, which is that as a man, if I am now looking to marry, regardless of how career motivated this woman is, I know that at any moment that maternal instinct is going to come on, whether she has that one child or the second child or the third child. And as a result of that, she would like to spend time, which is in her right, with her children more than she's in the office. As a result of that, I have to now make calculations to make sure that the family is in order and looked after as the male of the household without putting unnecessary strain on her to enjoy her time and enjoy being with her children. Now, the situation is different when these children are all yours biologically than when it is not. And this is the male perspective and the male lens. Because children that are not yours, you are not emotionally invested in these children from the get-go. Maybe at a later stage, as you spend time with these children and you are married to this woman and you are surrounded by these children and so on, and see how good natured they are and so on. That's a different thing. I'm talking about just looking at a prospect of a woman with a child or children. You have to now go back to the drawing board and say, I'm taking on a woman with 2 or 3 children. How am I going to make their life and my life comfortable? So by definition, right, those children are going to be somewhat of a constraint, a burden. It sounds harsh. I know it sounds harsh, right? But it's just how the male brain views this. These children wouldn't be a burden if they were my biological children, because they're my children. But the fact is that they're not. So now I have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how am I going to maintain this household? Therefore, as a single Muslim man, I have to now look at this and say, okay, I can, but there's a problem now. Let's say I have children with this woman, a child, let's say my son Muhammad. And my son Muhammad has taken a downgrade in the quality of life simply because the resources allocated to him would have to be dispersed among these children. Now, we all know the Sharia ruling that it's not upon me to provide for these children. But what man who has children under his roof, regardless of whether they're his or not, does not spend on them? This is unacceptable. So therefore, I have to now look at the fact that would I prefer any children that I have with option A, the woman with children, and option B, with a woman without children, that my son or my daughter would have to now have a downgrade in the quality of life that he could have. So when I say burden, it sounds harsh, but you as a man, you have to make calculated decisions in life.
Okay.
And marrying a woman is one of those calculated decisions. She can either be a liability or she could be a long-term asset.
And so because she has children, that limits her ability to be an asset?
So what I'm saying is, fundamentally, yes, because
so there's
regardless of
nothing
the
else.
situation,
So the children just upheave everything. Is that because what I'm hearing a lot about money, which I'm just going to be honest. At the end of the day, and Brianna spoke on that. At least the people on this panel, I'm going to say it's safe to say that we're not necessarily your average Joe in terms of how we think or how we approach life. And I want to make this comment before I address what you're saying, that there is this thought. She touched on it very, very briefly about when we look at divorced women and we look at single mothers, sometimes there is this idea that they are, and you mentioned this earlier about the 2 scenarios of why she would be divorced, but that's not leaving room for someone to redeem themselves. It's not even leaving room for someone to have grown and for someone to be a better person as a result of the either trauma that they experienced, the mistakes that they might have made. Because let's just agree with you on your first scenario. Let's all say that the first scenario was the woman being a bad picker. She has bad assessment of men. She doesn't she doesn't have any foresight or any of these things, right? And because you mentioned that now you can't trust her, and you'll be going around thinking that she might make bad decisions, whatever. But that's not leaving room for the possibility that in her single season after this divorce, that she took accountability for the fact that, let's say she is that person who chose wrong, that she took accountability for the fact that she chose wrong. She invested money, time, all of her resources into herself as well as her children, and building herself up from that once immature, irresponsible person that she was in that marriage. So we can't. So if we're going to look at that and we say that this woman, who from your scenario number one, has now improved dramatically, drastically, surpassed even some women in her same age range who, let's just use the 33-year-old woman from the Post, a 33-year woman who never been married before, but and you don't know her actual lifestyle outside of not being married, because maybe she ran the streets, maybe she had boyfriends, whatever. We don't know. Maybe she's pious. Allah knows best. But she's immature. She's also a bad picker. You just don't know that yet. You don't really know her quality. You don't know if she's actually an asset. You're looking purely at the fact that she doesn't have a history. So the lack of experience and the lack of history can also be a red flag, and it can also be to the detriment of the relationship. So this woman who's coming in with this experience, the bad that has transitioned into a benefit for her, can now provide her husband to be and her family with more of, and be more of an asset than she would have ever been as that single woman who wasn't married, no children, whatever the case may be. So I think that we're really honing in on this one little perspective of the fact that she has children. And I want to be balanced, because that's just how I am.
What about the other perspective?
But the thing
let's say for the sake of argument, the sister's done the work that she needed to do, and now she is in a very good space. And let's say, even for the sake of argument, throw the money issue out the window, and we just focus purely on the third aspect, which is my point that I made, which is that
the children
now have a father in the scene, or not in the scene. And this man might not be happy with, let's say, how I conduct or maintain this household. I might have a certain regiment where I expect my children to be Islamically educated to a certain point on a regular basis. Or I expect them to have a certain, or conduct themselves in a certain way. And if they don't, and they don't toe the line, they would need to be disciplined and brought back in line.
You are the husband, and you have that right.
I'm just saying, let's say also that this man, on another example, that he is in and out of the children's lives, and I say, you can't no longer come down to my property or come near these children because I am the guardian of these children. And you being in and out of their lives is an emotional damage that no child should ever feel. Therefore, you are no longer welcome here. If they reach a certain age of adulthood and they want to reach out to you, by all means. But as their formative years, as they're growing up, they are under my roof. Therefore, I wouldn't want them harmed emotionally, physically, or any type of way. So therefore, her having a problem with the disciplining of the children, or the fact that I made a decision that this man can no longer be here, and so on. These are adding complexities.
I get that, Brother Harsh. And
to my life,
let's use the
to
same
many
woman.
single brothers' lives, which is a problem, and one of the reasons why they might have an issue with marrying a sister that have kids.
Okay, and so because we're going to level here. We're going to level on all the points that you made. We're using the same woman from scenario one, who has done all the work, who has invested in herself and her children, and has invested in her Islamic understanding of her role as a wife, right? And has emotional mastery or management at the very least. And she comes into this marriage and she's in scenario two that you just presented. you're not dealing with a little girl. You're not dealing with a child or an or a emotionally unstable woman who will not support you in your decisions. If you're dealing with a grown woman who understands that your decisions are for the best interest of the family as a whole, those children that she knows are not yours, but you are raising them. She respects you, she values you, she supports you. She's going to back you and support your decision. Why would any woman in her right mind that has a good husband fight her husband to defend the man that didn't even take care of her and abandon his kids? Why would any woman in her right mind be on the side of the man who that marriage didn't even work out? He wasn't even good to her. So she's
I would
gonna
like I would like to point out the message right there that's just been sent by Sister Maria Brown, where she said, "So you're going to deny the kids
that's
from
okay.
seeing their
So Maria
father, which
Brown
is
is,
their own right."
and that's one perspective. And so we're not even focusing on that comment because we're sitting here elevating past that thought process, and we're
But
talking
you get
about,
my point, though, which
I
is
do
that
get your
some
point. And
women would
so
have a
some
problem with
women,
that
but
type of executive decision, which is,
Brother
for
Hajj,
me,
you wouldn't be looking at a woman like that, right? Just the same way I wouldn't be looking at a man who would be thinking that children are innately, inherently a burden, and that, he's just looking at it from this financial perspective. You have the right to have your opinion, you have the right to preserve your assets and all those different things. But if you're just looking at the children as like, nope, I'm not even, I wouldn't even want to be bothered. I'll take you, but not your kids. Again, you can do whatever you want, but like Brianna said, I also have the right to not want to be with you either. So you
Not
wouldn't.
to
absolutely.
not to want to be with a brother like that, but also not to get caught in these conversations where it feels like we have to beg someone to be. The reality is there's someone for you. There's someone that's going to align with you. You don't have to do this
Exactly.
back and forth. And in reality, when you're the more aligned you are with what you are supposed to be doing, who you're supposed to be, the less likely you'll find yourself, unless like Amber or Brother, unless you are in the work of doing the work that needs to be done to change mindsets, to elevate the people, things like that. But otherwise, you won't find yourself in these conversations. You won't be having this back and forth. And
And no.
then when we get in these conversations, I'm hearing a lot of, for the sake of argument, hypothetically speaking. The fact is, there are so many real life scenarios that we can be talking about. But the fact that we jump to hypothetical or for the sake of argument points to the ego that a lot of us are unconsciously still sitting in, really. Because myself, for example, there are a lot of situations within my own life that I'm open and ready to speak about. But when we have conversations like this that are needed, hypothetical situations are usually brought by people who are interested in keeping a monopoly over the situation. And people like that are not bad. It just says that either they've been hurt in this area, they are struggling in this area, but it's their job to not sit so hard on their ego when it comes time to discuss things like this.
I don't disagree. I don't necessarily disagree, but I would also say I think men have been shamed when we have an opinion or standard. And so men will go to hypotheticals because to give real life examples um, that can be used as ammunition in conversation. And I think, Amber, you took liberties that I think it's clear where our conversations begin prior to all of this. I acknowledge the uniqueness in your level of accountability. But I would suggest to you, sis, uh, maybe I'm biased because of the work that I do. Most women that reach out to me don't have that level of accountability. And that's the work that I have to do with them by getting them to that place. But I would suggest to you that most sisters that I come in contact with, they don't. They really don't. And it comes from a space of still being hurt and not having the tools to deal with that emotional discomfort. And I think what makes it even more difficult for them is then you come across men who are capable, have standards, and have an opinion. And oftentimes, they're not used to that. They're not used to being with a man or being interested in a man. Because it's like I mentioned before, what was the phrase? Uh, we attract,
Oh yeah, what we were
what was
talking
it?
about, we don't attract our equal. Our equal is who we entertain, basically.
Yes, that was the point that I was making. Exactly. Right. It's not that we only attract, where we're at. Right. If we're used to dysfunction, it's not that we only attract dysfunction. You attract functional as well. It's just that where you're at in that work that you're doing on self will dictate what you will gravitate towards, what you will accept, who you
Yeah.
will pass up along the way.
But
Because
who
I
would
can
also pass you up too, if we're being honest, because sometimes a healthy individual can come across a person who has much needed work to do. And while on the surface level, it's like they're attracted, when they kind of peel back some of the layers, they realize it's just not in alignment with them. And a person who's invested a lot in their self and self work and growth is just not going to take a chance on someone who has a lot of work to do. But
a
that
part
goes
of me. Let me interrupt you because that is, I think, the point where I think we agree,
back.
but I think a lot of times the language, and I'm not really in for policing either one. I think it's important for a lot of people to have that language because
Hmm.
once we talk about the language, we then get to the nuance.
Hmm.
But I think the language on both sides is where we end up missing the point. And I think that's the point. Men see certain things and have a certain responsibility that's different than women. And then that leads
Absolutely.
them to not entertain women that come to a relationship with children. So I don't think women, single women or divorcees are a burden. I have never said that. And I don't think that's what my brother Hash is saying. I think what I'm hearing, and this is what I'm hearing is that package is complicated. And if
Absolutely.
I'm supposed to show up how I want to show up in the life of the woman who's under my protection and the children that's under my protection, the reality is I need to have a certain level of resources. I need to have a certain level of compatibility.
Absolutely. And just to echo, brother, I mean,
And just
the
one last
questions.
point. One last point. Please keep that point. One last point that I'll say. Because when I was reading the sisters, and this is the nuance, and it's great. Hush, please don't forget that point. This is important because this speaks to what I said about how when men have an opinion, we'll be shamed. The comment that we started off with, if you read that sister comment, she says that men are afraid. Why? No, nobody's afraid. It's called physical responsibility. Like, I'm a grown man and I know that in front of my Lord, I'm responsible for a household financially. So I'm going to be meticulous about finances and I'm going to be very diligent about the type of woman I add to my family and the amount of children she has. That's called physical responsibility. Nobody's afraid, nobody's scared.
I,
But
I,
when
Absolutely. I mean, I
brother,
would like to echo the brother's statements there and say that look, I got to the point where I am in my life because I had to make certain calculated decisions, whether it's financial, whether it's career perspective, whether it's just in terms of the people that I am with, right? If I know certain brothers or certain people are not in the aligned with me in the type of goals and just generally holding yourself up to a certain standard. If they're not aligned to that, they have to go. I had to make calculated decisions to get to where I am. Naturally, I'm going to make calculated decisions when I choose to marry the type of woman that I want. Now, when it comes to, you know, the complexity of taking on board a woman that has children, You as a man, you have to go to the drawing board and say, okay, what are the pros and cons of this situation? Am I
I'm glad you pointed that
okay?
out because I was wondering when we were gonna assess that part of it.
Absolutely. And then also to mention the sister earlier that mentioned, hypothetical. No, when I, as a single Muslim man in the marriage market, and I'm talking to sisters and I'm asking certain direct questions like the scenarios I've given, and I'm gauging whether they're married or not. I'm gauging if they've done the work or where their mindset is. And if I see that the work hasn't been done or that she is completely in a different wavelength, she doesn't understand long term vision, she doesn't understand how I view what marriage is. It's not a short term thing where I'm married for a year or 2 years and then that's the end of it. No, we're here for the long run. So, therefore, if I present you with a situation where I say, your son is out of character, he's 19, 20, 21. I'm not, we don't live like non Muslims or we kick our children out at the age of 16. No, he's welcome. This is his home. But if he is behaving in an inappropriate manner, which is therefore affecting the mindset of the younger siblings, and I make the calculated decision that he has to go for the betterment of the younger siblings, what's your stance on that? If she comes with the mindset of, you know what, this is my baby and I'm maternal and all the rest of it, and she doesn't understand the damage that could be caused to these younger siblings, whether they're biologically mine or not, right? That tells me she is not in a right state and she is not fit to be my wife. So I have to cut her loose.
So, sisters, we have a lot of work to do, and there are brothers that have a lot of
These are
work
real
to do
time
as well.
examples. These are real
They
life
are,
examples. They're not something that is in a storybook.
yeah,
Okay,
brother
these are
Hashra.
real time examples. In the same way with the man who is the father of these children, and if he is, whether he's present or if he is in their life one moment and exiting one moment, or he's there one time and then 10 years later he comes back, I need to say, look, I need to draw the line somewhere here. These children do deserve better than this. They can't be emotionally damaged like this. And
Hmm.
I, as the protector and the maintainer of this household, have to draw the line somewhere.
Believe it or
And if
not, though,
she
brother Hash, there are women
and if
who will
she tells
actually do
me,
that personally. They
but this is
will.
what I'm saying. If she tells me though, these are this man is the father of my children, and I would love for them to have that connection with them, and he will always have access to the children. No, that tells me this woman doesn't qualify, full stop,
Okay.
because she doesn't realize what long-term vision is.
So I wanna go back to the post, right? And I want to say this isn't a defense, but I don't know if you read my message, brother Hash, but I put a message in the in the private chat for you. So inshallah, if you get a chance to read that, this isn't a defense necessarily. It is one thing that I don't believe is fair in this arena when we have these types of discussions is when we point out that women need to do the work, or when we point out that women have all these issues, or whether it's being a single mom, or they didn't choose well, or their vetting process was off. When we say that, we say it and we stop, right? So when men talk to men, there's a certain way that you guys can talk. You could be very direct, you can be very straightforward, you could just say it and drop off, and you get the point. Women do not think like men, and it doesn't serve us to have that very abrasive, direct message of, well, you just didn't, your vetting process was off, or you just didn't this, or you, and it's very abrasive. It's no, it's not healing or inviting in any way, right? And you said earlier, I'm not invested and I don't have to be invested in the nuances. Very true. You don't at all. You can be irresponsible, socially irresponsible with your words. Not just you, Brother Hosh, but I'm saying any one of us can be socially irresponsible and get on social media, or create a post and just blurt something out that could be traumatic or further damaging to the person that you call yourself pushing back on and challenging, because you want to, in a way, invite them to open up their mind. That's the best way I could put it right now. Well, that's not inviting, right? It's not inviting to tell a woman that she's doesn't look the same at 33 that she did at 23, right? That's
Is that
not
not
inviting.
reality?
No, it is so we're not talking. So again, men and women speak differently. It behooves both of us. It behooves both sides of the aisle to understand how the other interprets or translates information. Men are more logical, you hear that. Women are more emotional, you hear that. But then we drop off and we don't really provide any we don't provide security in that, right? When we tell a woman that your vetting process is off and we leave it there instead of inviting her, or offering an alternative, or offering a solution, or offering some type of wider scope, it just feels like a shot. It feels like women are constantly being reminded of the trauma that is now an issue. I don't disagree with Brother Nasir or with you or even with what Brianna said in terms of there is so much work to be done. Personally, for me in my own life, alhamdulillah, I have dedicated almost the last 7 years to doing my own personal work. But what I see in the space of women is they feel like they have to, I don't agree with it either. I'm not defending it, but I'm only trying to open your mind to the possibility that when we have these discussions, we don't have to be as harsh and blunt with our responses. We can invite, listen, sisters, if it's really about encouraging women to elevate, then we can have that discussion. I don't know, unless a person is just completely immature and delusional. I don't know any women who's not open to a man having an honest, genuine, safe discussion with her about the fact that she needs help, that she needs healing. Oh, all right. What are you saying, Brother Nasir? You don't have your mic. You're
You
muted.
turn your mic on. Your mic is off.
I know plenty.
Oh,
I
okay.
know plenty. And let me respectfully disagree with you.
Okay.
I think strategically for sisters, and my bias, majority of the women I work with are sisters, are divorcees. So my bias is uh, celebrate brothers saying things like that. And the reason why is, one, it lets you know up front where his mentality is. And two, it doesn't stop you from saying, you're right, I don't look as good as I did when I was 33, but I have more wisdom than I did when I was 23.
That's probably a person
And
like that
and
is
and
more mature and elevated that can come from
and
that
that
viewpoint.
speaks to the point that you brought up earlier.
Hmm.
Right, the point that you brought up earlier is, if we're looking at this hypothetical situation, the sister that you don't know anything about, you don't know if she can handle A, B, and C. But I, as a woman who's gone through this marriage or this divorce, I have a certain wisdom and skill sets now that I'm comfortable with, that I bring to a marriage, and I believe is an asset to you as a man.
Hmm.
To me, and what I encourage sisters to do, is that's the route to go. The route to go is embrace the reality that, yes, you are not as hot as sliced bread as you were when you were 23. But at 33, you have lessons learned that
Hmm.
can probably help me, and make sure that I don't fumble the bag in any kind of way, that my home is safe when I come home. There's no discomfort or no turmoil. You have that level of skill set you can bring. That's the selling point.
But you're not
That's the
disagreeing with
leverage.
me, actually. You are agreeing with me because that's what I'm
I
saying.
am.
Wait, Brother Hosh,
Hold
because
on,
I don't
hold
want
on.
you to,
Let me
what? You
let
can
me
disagree with
nuance.
me
Let
if
me
you
tell you
want.
why I disagree. My disagreement is, I think that sisters should bring a different mindset and narrative to a brother that comes directly and say, you're not as beautiful, or don't look as you used to look at 23.
No,
To
you're
me,
partially disagreeing with me because the point that
okay,
you made about how he can add that, yeah, but you're 33, you come with a certain wisdom that can help me, da 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 da. That's what I'm saying, is that to cut it off at, but you're not as pretty as you was when you were 23, there doesn't leave any room for a
well,
healthy discussion.
maybe I didn't articulate what I was saying.
Okay.
I'm not saying for the brother to say that.
Oh.
And side note, sisters, don't expect my brother Hosh, I don't know you, no disrespect to you, but don't expect certain things from brothers. Look for professionals for these type of things. So
Mhm.
don't expect a brother to give you that full sentence. The sentence that I gave you was a narrative of thought for you to have in your mind when you hear a brother say that you don't look as young as you did when you were 23. Your response mentally, so that you get in control of the emotion, is,
Mhm.
brother, you're right, but I have more wisdom than I had when I was at 23.
That
That's
Absolutely.
the
works.
Okay.
mindset, that's the
I see
narrative.
what you're saying.
you
That
you, you see.
works.
I
That
do.
works.
I do.
If a sister said to me what she brings into the relationship and what she's learned, and at her age of being 33, is the wisdom, experience of what works and what doesn't work in a marriage, and so on, fine. That is commendable. Um, but don't act like you are the best thing since sliced bread,
That's
and
the term we're gonna use from now on.
and your resume to a single Muslim man, when he's looking at it, is a 33-year-old woman, divorced with children, with a man in the background, and then you say you're settling. That's
Okay.
problematic. Words mean things. And when you paint the picture from that angle, that tells me you're very immature.
Mhm.
That also tells me that you have consumed maybe too much TikTok, and you're using a lot of the terminologies and, you know, talking points that you hear non-Muslims using in their spaces, such as
Mhm.
Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate and the rest of it.
Mhm.
You haven't done the work.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So
How am I supposed to take you seriously at
we
your
could agree
age
there. I think you left
when
something
you
out. There's hurt.
come from that approach? Is what I'm saying. And also, that has to be challenged. You can't splurge out these statements and not be challenged. In a similar fashion to that sister that was talking about brothers um, pacifying themselves by sleeping with non-Muslims, girls. That is the most ignorant thing that I've ever heard in my life. You can't. That tells me you don't understand uh, how a Muslim man lives his life. You're making assumptions, very ignorant
I think
assumptions.
so. You might be on your way to making an assumption too, if we go too far into that realm too, because there are a lot of,
Exactly. Because
uh,
you might not know that the personal experience with that sister, which I know personally.
or I
I've
was speaking about the brother, because brothers make decisions to be with a non-Muslim woman for many reasons, but there are brothers who lack discipline, and that's the main thing. But I understand what you're saying, but I also just want to touch on something that you were talking about, Amber, which is something that um, I'm not even 30 yet, but what you're talking about is an internal battle that I've had with myself um, before. This idea that as a woman, you have to remember that you don't have to come in and adapt this masculine mentality or way of doing things in order to be heard. And I think like there's so much truth in that, and it's almost similar to what Brother Nasir said about men being used to just kind of not being heard at times.
Mhm.
And I think there's a similarity with the two. And I think it's just about backing up a little bit and focusing on ourselves a little bit more. I think that's the answer to a lot of our issues. But I also think that some women, like myself, develop these things naturally because of what they've been through, and because what they've
What do you
been through
mean?
has, for example, I've been told that I have a more masculine mindset when it comes to the way that I speak, the things that I say. They tend to come out more abrasive. Maybe that's another thing Amber was talking about. It doesn't have to be, abrasive or as direct or just kind of harsh. I mean, but just like Brother Nasir said, there's a wisdom in learning how to speak direct. There's a wisdom in learning. I'm sorry, I have children. There's a wisdom in learning how to organize your emotions. Emotions are not a bad thing. We've been blessed with more. We've been blessed with a different mindset. But I also think that one of the greatest disservices that we do as a society is when we get into conversations, we say things like, men don't think this way, women don't think this way, all while trying to convince somebody to think this way. So it's just about how a balanced person thinks. Yeah, there's a way a man thinks naturally and a way a woman thinks. That's
Hmm.
for sure. But it's also about how a balanced person in general approaches anything. Because do you kind of understand what I'm saying? Because this is something that I go back and forth with myself about. It's just about having a balance, because there's good in what he's saying, there's good in what she's saying, but I'm saying what I've learned from personal experience is just balance.
I agree. I would actually agree. And that's actually what I promote. That's what I advocate for. I believe that I have nothing at all against men as a whole. I disagree with the blanket statements, sometimes that are made about men, and I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. Again, this isn't to not be in support of women, but from a woman's perspective, you hear things like, oh, men are bad, or, like even with the comment of, black men are this or whatever. These things aren't helpful. I will be the first person to say that I believe that what we need to do, instead of continuing to have this divide and continuing this war of the battle of the sexes, we need to find more ways to meet in the middle. It's not helpful. If a man is interested, if a man, a actual man, masculine man, Muslim man, is looking to get married to a woman, how does it benefit him to think negatively about women? Because it doesn't matter if she's a mom, a single mom or a single woman or whoever. If he's not coming in with a balanced perspective or a genuine belief about the good nature of women, then he's already starting behind the eight ball. And the same thing would be true for the woman. If she's coming into relationship, initially he might seem like he checks all the boxes or whatever, but in if her belief, if her limiting beliefs or her natural beliefs about men is that, oh, men are going to let you down, men aren't, you can't count on them, men are this, men are that, she might come into the relationship in the honeymoon phase, everything is great, but then you're going to start to see that she's going to start showing that she doesn't trust you, that she doesn't respect you, that like those things will come out inevitably.
Those usually come out quite early.
Well, whether they come out early or they come out late, my point is that women and men, we need to join forces. That is what I promote. That is what I advocate for. It
No, I
does
believe in
no,
that.
excuse me?
I believe in that,
Yeah,
100%.
I do. I believe that it doesn't serve the woman to be men are bad, men are bad, and for the men to be like, well, women are toxic or women are, they're broken, they need help. Yeah, even though you're muted, brother Nasser. He's ready to go at it. What are you
Apology.
about to say?
No, no, Amber, I would actually, um, I'll make this point, and then Hush, if you want to go, you say anything you want to say because I know you need to go. But Amber, I would like to hear more from you in terms of what that looks like,
Hmm.
because meeting in the middle for what is my question. What is this? I want to hear more from you
Very
about
good
this
point.
meeting in the middle, because the reality is where I'm at in life. Either she's getting on my program, or I
I'm not. I'm
love
not
her.
even.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Amber,
Okay, but
before
So that's why I wanted clarity from
I
you,
add to
will
that,
because
maybe you
definitely.
can.
I will
because
definitely
please
clarify.
understand, some women, they may not use they'll use that language or something similar, which means comes off as don't have standards, don't think the way you think like
Absolutely
me.
not. I mean, come on. No, I would. I couldn't believe. I would. It would be very hard for me to believe that someone can get that out of what I'm saying, because I am advocating for standards and worth and raising your value, right? and working on those things. We talked about that last night. That value is can be a skill set. Like these are different things that you might need to work on. You're not shaming or demeaning or you're not shaming the person. You might be shaming the actions of the person, right? So those are separate things. It's completely separate things. So to clarify, what I mean by meet in the middle is the men are doing the work to heal, because just as many broken women, there are broken men, right?
Agreed.
And so we could talk about money all day long, but in 2023, there are a lot of women who do quote unquote, and yes, this is Muslim women. This is Muslim women. I know Brother Hash is like, well, these aren't our topics. Yes, they are. They are becoming our topics. Muslim women flex that they make their own money now. So they're not necessarily always marrying for a come up financially, and they're not always looking for the man to be the provider. So we have to take that. That's still on the table, but that
That's
can't
not a
be
problem though.
okay. But I want to finish my point because I have a very bad memory and I also have a headache. So I need to get this out. At the end of the day, when we have to balance these perspectives, we have to put it all on the table. And when you say, well, listen, she's either on my program or not, most women, now I know you said that kind of in the heat of the moment, but most intelligent, mature women want to be with a man who has the mindset of this is my program, this is my vision, and they have a purpose and they want to get behind that purpose and support that purpose. That is our purpose, is to do that, is to be the helpmate, right? So most healthy, whole women want a man who can say something like, well, this is my program and I want you, like, this is it. Like, you're either on board or you're not on board. Okay, Brother Nasir. Anyway.
All I'm going to say is I'm going to send you the receipts, because when I speak,
but they're not healthy and whole women. This is clearly what we're saying.
I don't want to, because I have to go. I'm just, because for me, I'm speaking from the angle of a single Muslim man who's in the marriage market. And what I'm telling you is that the reality on the ground, and Brother Nasir can also confirm, is that a lot of the sisters that you come across, it's always going to be a numbers game, right? But the vast majority that you come across have been tainted in some way or form by the non-Muslim narrative, and they are a product of their environment. For me, okay, a sister, and a lot of the brothers, I can speak for a lot of the brothers that are in my circle, a woman making money doesn't mean anything to us, simply because
that wasn't, I didn't put that up there.
I'm just saying, the problem isn't the fact that she has her own business or whatever it is. The problem is the mindset that comes along with that, which is the mindset that they have developed as a result of being the product of their environment. I don't believe, for example, that a woman is an alpha female. The reason, and many of the brothers also that I'm with, they don't believe it's a thing, simply because alpha, by definition, exhibits and shows and projects masculine qualities. You defining yourself as an alpha female tells me you are a dysfunctional woman, because you are exhibiting, projecting masculine traits. The problem isn't the money. The problem is not how you got your money. The problem is the mindset that comes along with that money.
So, Brother Hash, I'm wondering if you heard anything that I said. And this is me and Brother Nasir spoke about this yesterday. And I'm actively working on how I can effectively communicate with men, because I'm starting to learn that I'm probably not speaking direct enough to where the message is coming across. I say that because you just said exactly what I said in a different way. You said exactly what I said with using different words. The belief is the same, that what I'm promoting is that women do the work, but men also do the work to heal, so that the idea of the meeting in the middle is that we're finding each other. You saying on the dating market or the marriage market, there are more women who are jaded and broken than there are women who are healed and ready. Okay, women are finding the same thing. That's my point, is that if we promote men doing the work, women doing the work, we can find each other and we won't have such a hard time picking through the scraps of people who are making the women feel like, you know what, I'm done. And the men say, you know what, I'm done, or they're having a very hard time finding the quality woman that they're looking for. So you just mansplained exactly what I said. You just said it differently.
I'd
You
even
think
add
so?
that doing the work would also let you be someone who's able to recognize when someone that you've been praying and in contemplation comes along on both sides as well. Um, so you can recognize this brother. So you can recognize, and then so that you can accept, because that's part of the problem too.
Brianna, you said something I really I wanna highlight. You said something earlier about settling. Why are we saying that as a bad thing? Now I'm hoping that it comes across to Brother Hash and Brother Nasir effectively. So
We
when she
listening. We
you
listening.
listen? Okay. So when she said that earlier, she was saying that if I'm a woman and I look up to this man, and Brianna, I don't want to over explain what you're saying, so you can chime in and tell me if I'm wrong. But
No, no, go ahead.
if I'm a woman who is doing the work, actively doing the work, I might be a single mom. I know I'm getting older. There are some realities, like I'm probably not going to meet or find the quality man that I'm looking for who's single. He might be married already. So when we're looking at quote unquote settling, it's not, it's, the word shouldn't even be there. But what she's trying to say is that, yes, I'm going to play my position. And why is that a bad thing? Why am I going to be looked at? Or why should I look at it as a negative that I might have had to marry a man who was already married, or, marry somebody maybe a little older, or whatever the case may be, because I understand my circumstance and what I bring. I understand that I bring with me more of a complicated situation. And there is a certain type of man that can handle that, or that would be receptive to that. Not necessarily the 28-year-old single man who's never been married, or the 28-year-old single man without any children. That might not be in the realm of possibility. But I don't see settling as a negative thing. I don't like the word settling, but am I explaining that right? Or
No, even in that, I think I was also speaking to what you said about, a man coming along, and it should, it sounds like it's coming across as my way or the highway. And we think these things because of things like Brother Hash giving the meaning of settle. I think he gave a meaning that spoke to coming down, whatever. But if you pull up definitions for settle, you can also see definitions like end by mutual agreement, move with a group of others to live in a new country or area. You pick the definition that applies most, really. So settling can also mean a woman getting hold of her humility, a man getting hold of her humility, and meeting in the middle, like Amber was, talking about. It just depends on what's going on in your personal life, the verbiage, and the meaning that you apply to things.
that's a great point. I'd love to tap into, because everything is empty except the meaning that we give it. And oftentimes in these situations, when we are reading posts like the responses from men and women, we also have to leave room to understand that they have a specific meaning that they gave either their past event, bad experiences, or even their perception of what that could look like in the future. And so sometimes we take those and we take them, we give a meaning to something, and we believe that it's the reality. Like this is all that there is, or all that there will ever be. So yeah, Brother Hash, we were saying.
Amber, if you don't mind, apologies, but Hush needs to go. I was just
Oh,
telling him
okay.
if there's any parting words he wants to say, and we'll make sure we get him back for our next episode. Hush, anything you want to say?
I mean, it's great to have you both on board, Al-Amin and Jazakallah khair. I mean, settling, for given the context where that was said, is problematic, because of the way and the profile of the sister that made that comment. And by starting off by saying that she had a problem and that she was done with Black Muslim men, and then adding to that that she was settling for them, even though they're acting like they were the prize, and using Kevin Samuels and non-Muslim talking points in their sphere, that is problematic, because you are going to be held accountable for that, and you will have some pushback. And given the context and the context of those type of words being used in that sphere, which is the non-Muslim war zone that is called the dating pool, you can't bring that into the Muslim space and then not have anyone challenge that. Everyone knows what the context of that was. There's no Cambridge, Oxford definition that needs to be looked. And you can't say you're settling when to a Muslim man or an entire group of Muslim men, Black Muslim men, many of them decent, looking at that profile of the sister, seeing that they'll be taking on unnecessary complications into their lives, that begs the question, who's settling for who?
In that context, I would agree. But
that was my point, and that was the point that I was making. And I asked the question, which was, if a Muslim man, regardless of whether he's in your community in America or otherwise, is presented with that profile, how are you settling for him, and what benefit does he get?
Brother Hash, can you hold on? I know you have to go. Can you just give me like 1 minute, 2 minutes of your time, please?
Go for it.
Because I want to say this, that knowing the sister personally, the profile is not what you outlined. So what she was referencing is men who are presenting themselves in a way where they're actually coming up off the woman. So when they see the single mom, it's more of a come up like, okay, she's not going anywhere. And she's probably so happy to have a man that, you know, she'll stick around and I can kind of get away with a lot of nonsense. There is not the reality is not that he's coming with finances. He's not coming with leadership. He's not coming with the qualities. So yes, we can go back to the discussion of the vetting process is off and the picking is wrong and, you know, all those things, which are realities. And that's why I said earlier that these particular women were new shahadas who came from broken experiences and did not have any good representation or leadership or guidance and were exploited by imams and Muslim leaders. So when they were paired up with these men, it was exploitation. Like they were paired up with men who were either already married and who was just looking for what could be looked at as a mistress or, you know, just a second option. Or it was men who were single who saw that she had children and that it was a perfect opportunity to come up. Like he would have a place to stay and food to eat, and she's doing it anyway. So that is, I'm glad that we came back full circle because I want you to understand something, that the landscape is not always the same. And when she mentioned Black Muslim men, because of the location, because of the experience that I know of personally, these particular men are not in the pool of the profile that you described. So when she says settling, that's exactly what she means, is that if I was, just because I'm 33, and if this is what life is for me, that these are the only men available to me. Again, we could argue that she needs to widen her scope and, you know, change her perspectives and we can argue all that stuff, but I'm just providing the nuance. I wrote you that message and I wanted you to read it.
Yeah.
But the profile is not a man that you consider yourself to be or that are in your circle. The profile are men who are looking to exploit women, looking to take advantage of women, looking to come up off of the woman. because she has a good job, and he knows that she has kids that she has to support anyway, so he can just come along for the ride. So that was the reality of her situation, which is why I said there's a lot of hurt in her post. There was a lot of jadedness in a lot of the responses that I got, because unfortunately, as much as we don't want to believe this exists and this happens, it's a reality. It's a reality that many women have been in domestic violence situations, and no, they didn't get married to the man because they chose him. In some cases, their father chose them, and it wasn't because he was. There's so many, like Brianna said, there's so many circumstances that we could really talk. If we're going to have a real talk, we could talk for real, and we could talk about the reality that everybody's landscape and situation and experiences are not the same as what you might see in your scope, where your location, where you're at, or the people that you know. Because there could be the heart of Chicago or New York City or Baltimore, where there are Muslims who practice Islam, but unfortunately their lifestyles are completely different than something that you would have been exposed to.
Hush, go ahead and respond, because I want to make a point, but I'll
No,
let you.
like I said, I mean, I think it does give a different perspective from what the sister said. But my reaction to the comment was based purely, and as I said, I don't need obliged to take on board that trauma from the sister.
Yeah.
I'm judging her purely on the comment that she has made and the profile that was presented. And I'm making a response to that. And I have to hold her accountable because some of those things are not true.
Okay.
Whether in your context, in the circle, or the 25-mile radius you live in, is besides the point. You can't make a generalization like that without somebody pushing back and saying, no, that's not actually factually accurate. That was my
I
response.
agree with the fact that it was a generalization. It was the space was created for people to just give their opinion based off of their experiences. And so I think that's what you saw. And it's similar to you in your response. You responded from your point of view. You responded from where you are. And, so nobody's necessarily saying that. I'm going to stop there.
Brother, I mean, I need to go.
I appreciate you.
And it was great to be on the platform, like Lacher, and we'll catch up soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Shukran Nabi.
Sorry.
Alaikum salam. Amber, so
yes.
So my issue with the sister's comment is I appreciate that you gave the context, but however, I would suggest to you, assumption I'm making is that a lot of the sisters that responded to you in your DM, and I'm open to being corrected, they focused on his comment and not hers.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Okay. And this is my point. This is something that I think, sisters, is a teachable moment, because it's very problematic. No one checked the sister and what she said.
Because most people probably agreed with her also too, if we're going to be honest.
And if we're going to be honest, then you prove the point of what we were trying to say earlier, is that you and some others, you guys may be outliers. What I'm saying to you, and what Harsh was trying to say to you, is a lot of sisters that we come in contact with are not in a healthy space, although they have the verbiage of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And can say they're doing all the work and all of that, but this was a good example. If you're not checking your sister in Islam, for that comment, then where you at with your healing? Because she literally said she's done with all Black Muslim men.
And I'd
My
like to
mama Black.
point something out as well. Just the fact that I don't believe the brother was an African American brother that we were speaking to. So when you have sisters like this, her point may be valid. That may be her absolute experience. But when you get into the public and you make statements like that, you have to remember that even if you are by yourself in a corner of a country somewhere, ultimately you represent something as a whole. So then you get into conversations like this where people are not going to understand your life. They're not going to understand the dynamics. They're not going to understand how you were raised. They're going to be looking at exactly what you said and exactly like Brother Hash said, the profile, what's presented.
Sis, if I can push back gently, of course, to you. I'm sorry, another sister wants to join. Um,
I'm going to have to fall off in about 15 minutes, inshallah.
okay. Sis, what I would say, and we'll wrap up then, what I'll say is this. My pushback would be this. Her emotions are valid, but what she said was inaccurate. Her mindset is inaccurate. Her emotions are valid. That's her experience. And her emotions are a byproduct of the narrative, the story she's telling herself. So I'm not questioning her emotions, but I'm questioning the suspect thing that she said. And the reality is, what would have been more accurate is the men, the African American, the Black Muslim men that I have come in contact with, I'm done with that type of caliber of men. And she ended out the comment saying that she's broadening her perspective or broadening her pool of options, something like that. That would have been the more accurate thing to say, but she didn't say that. She had
I agree.
a blanket condemnation of Black Muslim men. And so for me, when I read that, that just screams hurt. And the fact that, again, most people caught on to what Haj said, and no one went at addressing her comment.
Yeah.
It's to be problematic. And if I can, one other thing, another comment that someone said on your post, no one seemed to point out and hold the sister accountable for when she says that she gave a chance to men that were not on her level, something like that. Like, Mom, why you? This is what we talked about before. This is that fixer mentality. Why are you giving chances? You shouldn't be giving chances. This is it's a paradigm shift that needs to happen with sisters. You don't need to be giving somebody a chance. That just shouldn't even be in the vocabulary. Let him prove himself, let him work on himself, and then it's not about giving him a chance. It's about looking at what he's done. It's looking at the data. And then you make a logical decision that I'm going to follow this man. I'm going to get on his program because of what he said is matching what he's been doing. Not I'm going to give him a chance that what he thinks and what he's saying is going to, magically pan out. That's asinine. Pardon. But that's my thought. What came with that comment that came up is that no one checked her on, like, it's kind of this like men are the problem, but Mom, you acknowledge that you're giving men chances.
I'm going to agree with you on that. And this is why I said that earlier when I said we need to meet in the middle. That's what I mean. Because, okay, we're focusing on why Muslim women, the conversation took a turn of its own. Why Muslim women are not getting married or avoiding marriage. That was the topic. At the same time, I believe that is just as equally important to focus on are the men prepared to be the leaders or prepared to be the profile that Brother Hash and you wanted, you laid out? Are they of the caliber and quality of men that can actually say those things? Can they say, get on my program, and a woman actually want to follow them? A woman first of all, a woman who's in the right state of mind and who has invested in herself is going to laugh at that. No, you are not. I'm not getting on anything. This is going to be a roller coaster ride, and I'm afraid of heights. So I'm not doing it. Um, but if you are a genuine man, like you said, where your words are meeting your actions, then of course you're going to assess the situation. If it's a suitable match or a suitable compatible situation, then yeah, you get on the program. I agree with the giving chances thing, and we talked about that in our last live about how when we have certain things that we need to work on within ourselves that we have yet to acknowledge as a reality. Um, those unfortunately become a detriment when if we're seeking out a match from a un, unhealed and unwhole place, and we're looking to fill the void with these different things. It gives a secondary benefit, and this is not about the lady because I know her in particular, but this is just for in general for all women who fall in this category. It's a secondary benefit that if things don't work out, you can always say, well, you know what, and I tried and I gave you a chance, and you know what, and I stuck by you or I supported you, knowing full well that he wasn't even worthy to begin with, or knowing full well that he had issues, knowing full well that he had red flags. We talked about this last night. And so we can see them and we can choose to ignore them, but then we get to be able to be the victim in the end to say that, well, see, it was you all along. And again, this is not taking a shot at anyone in particular, but I will say that is something that I would like to see happen more in this space with healers and counselors and coaches, is that we
Yeah,
invite.
I agree with you, and I think another part of this is we need to have these conversations. And one of a side note, because it comes back to what I said earlier. I prefer brothers to be direct, as Harsh was, and I think that aids sisters because again, it lets you know where brother is, and it lets you pivot and look at a different brother.
Yeah.
And I think that's what would be important for sisters to do, is to make sure that you don't create the limiting belief that there's no brothers out there that are willing to take on and are interested in divorcees and divorcees with children.
Mhm.
Like that's not true. Like the reality is there are women who have children who are divorcees and or widows that have children that are getting remarried. That's just a reality. The question becomes, are you going to spend your time and your energy focusing on the men that are not interested in women with children for whatever reason? And that's their right. But it makes no sense to be focused on those men, and I would argue be fixated. Like
Mhm.
some sisters are really like constantly reposting the comments that certain brothers are making about divorcees. Like, sis, if he's not interested in a divorcee, then that's just not the type of brother you need to be listening to. You don't need to be resharing it. You need to be focused on the brothers that actually are open to that, and they're out there. But this is the pushback that I think I have, and you guys may disagree with me, and I'm open to it. That would require you then doing the work.
Absolutely. There it is.
Right? Because if I see that there are a pool of brothers that will accept me, accept my children, as actually interested in me, will strike a deal with me, then that means I also have to show up though and make sure that my baggage is minimized and I'm not going to sabotage this. Versus, I stick with, Rico and Ray Ray, and they already got drama and baggage, so they
It makes
can't really.
it's more comfortable. It's familiar. And so I always say that, and this is true to our nature, that the familiar feels safe, even if it's not, even if it genuinely is not. Familiar feels safe, unfamiliar feels unsafe. And so we gravitate towards what is familiar. But you can change what is familiar. You can become unfamiliar with the familiar and more familiar with the unfamiliar if it's beneficial. So you can distance yourself from the drama. You can distance yourself from the toxicity. You can distance yourself from your own brokenness by doing the work and healing, right? And that becomes more and more unfamiliar every day. The more pathways that you create and the more you deepen those grooves over time of practicing self-love and, learning more these tools that you teach in your program, which I'm absolutely love and would recommend that any woman listening and any woman that has the ability to sign up because I think it's phenomenal. It's definitely transformative. So when we deepen these grooves, what used to be familiar becomes unfamiliar over time. And so you don't want to be with Ray Ray and Rico because that seems like no, no. Like it's a huge red flag. You're like, absolutely not. So you do gravitate more towards what used to feel unfamiliar and um, unsafe, quote unquote. It's not that it was ever unsafe. It's just that you were not in alignment with a person with standards, with a person that actually sets boundaries, with a person who has a vision and a purpose because you didn't. So that felt intimidating before because it was very unfamiliar. So when you position yourself where you're moving away from all those limiting beliefs and you're moving towards self-love and owning your story and your self-worth, you're becoming more familiar with those things that once was intimidating. And so then you're inviting and you're able to receive a man who is on that level. And so, and I had made this comment on a clubhouse discussion where a sister had said, why is it that I keep ending up with the same man in a different body? And it's because unfortunately you're the same woman and you're going to keep getting the same man because you haven't changed anything to get anything for anything to change. And so this is true for not just women and men. I speak to women, so I'm always going to pull my sister's coats because I want to see us do better and I want to see us elevate and come out of these situations where we're constantly being overexposed to these traumatic experiences. And the more you keep being traumatized and keep being traumatized, the less likely you are to change or want to change or be motivated to step out of it. And so at some point, you have to make the decision and choose to elevate and choose to step away from what was once familiar. It doesn't mean it's okay. It just means it's what you know and it's all you knew, but you can learn something else.
Can I pose a question to both of you? Two parts. One is a question, and I think brothers would benefit from hearing it, and I think it'd be a sister's perspective, but also just to come back to the point of the topic in terms of why are sisters deciding to give up on the marriage process. One of the reasons why I like brothers being direct, even though to some it may come off as harsh, the reason why I think that's strategically good for women is because for so long sisters have been lied to. And they've been given the comforting lies. Sometimes it can be very shocking when reality of how some men think is articulated. Now, I'm not advocating for men to be rude, but I am advocating for men to be direct so that women aren't being lied to. But here's the point. The reason why that I'm making that point is one of the reasons why I wanted to have this discussion is one of my clients that reached out to me and said that she didn't want to continue on trying to find someone. She was giving up because she felt like it was just imbalanced, that men had all of the leverage. She's 40. And so she spent most of her adult years in a marriage. And so now she's really realizing the imbalance of the marriage market when men are older versus women being older. She didn't understand that reality. It was overwhelming. And so I think one of the things, the reason why I like men being direct, not rude, is it conveys an understanding of how men think. And the reality is, men do look at age. men do look at beauty, right? These things that may be considered vain, we do. But I think a lot of women would like for men not to look at those things. Men do look at the number of children a woman has, not because, quote unquote, they're a burden, but because that's finances that I need to have to make sure that I can be the man that I need to be for those kids. Because I think we could agree it would be financially irresponsible and spiritually irresponsible for me to sign up to marry a woman that has 3 children or 4 children or 2 children or 1 children, and I don't have the financial means to step up in a way that I need to. You guys would agree on that, right? You would agree, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So that's why I think I appreciate men being direct, because as someone who works with women, I want them to be able to hear the directness and then make an informed decision in terms of very quickly before emotion is involved, if this is a man that you need to give time and energy to. But sis, let me ask you this question. Um, Before we go, what are your thoughts on sisters who are older, who are divorcees, negotiating how much a man has to contribute for marriage?
I don't understand that. I need you to expound on that question.
When I started, I don't understand that. Okay, okay. What I mean is this: for sisters, what are your thoughts on sisters that are in a position that have financial means that they're able to take care of themselves? What are your thoughts on them entering into a marriage with a man where a man doesn't have to take care of her 100%? What are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, based on Islamic principles, I don't think that that is I don't think that that is how it's supposed to be. Personally, whether the woman has her own money or doesn't have her own money shouldn't determine how much that man is uh, contributing or what he is doing to sustain his family and his marriage. Like that, her money shouldn't determine anything, and we know that from the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His wife, his first wife Khadija, was older than him, and she was actually his boss. I mean, so when you look at it that way, financially, she was positioned. She was in a much better position than he was, and yet he still took on the financial responsibility for his household. I actually, there is a, I gotta I gotta look for this book, but there is a book that actually talks about their marriage and their story in detail, in a greater detail than I've ever heard about it before. But you always hear that she had her own money and everything, but we don't really expound on the fact that the Prophet ﷺ didn't actually take her money. He supported her with what he brought to the table. And so, Islamically, from an Islamic perspective, I don't think it matters. I wouldn't believe that it would matter if the woman has money or doesn't have money. Now, and it's her choice. It's her personal choice. If she wants to, um, what does it say? I agree, but then that leaves so many women left out of being an option to men who feel and able to take care of a family who's not 100% his. When did that comment come in?
It just came in right now.
So is that about the woman and who's aged and
See, let me tell you why I asked you that question. Islamically, you're right 100%. There's no doubt with that, that men are responsible financially for the family 100%. That's without, there's no debate on that. And you're not going to find any scholarly opinion that says otherwise. At most, you'll find difference in madhab that talks about whether he should pay for medical or not. But that's, again, um, these are nuances. The point is, a man is required to provide financially. My question for you, though, is would you say to sisters who are older, who are divorcees, who want to get married, that is something that they should consider making a deal on.
Personally, me, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I don't. I don't necessarily work with women who are older. Who I haven't worked with the. Well, that's not true. I have about two women that are older than me by about maybe 10 years. But that's not a norm for me, and that's not even that's never come up in discussion. So where I stand today, that could change possibly. You know, um, but where I stand today, I wouldn't suggest that. I would want to ask you though, what would be the benefit of her doing that? I have an idea of what could be the benefit, but if you were to suggest that, why would you suggest that?
Um, before I go, Brianna, did you want to say anything before I
I
elaborate?
did. I'd gotten cut off and I didn't hear the full question. So maybe if you could ask the question again in entirety, maybe I could respond better then.
No problem. So the question is essentially this: for a sister, and let me, Amber, I should have been more clear. A sister who 30 plus with a divorcee or widow with children, uh, and she has an option in front of her, but the brother financially is not secure that he can provide 100%. Should
Oh, you
she?
didn't say that.
Well, you know, look, this is
See, because
this,
nuance again. So you
this
say
is
nuance,
this
but
is
nuance changes
YouTube. This
everything.
is YouTube. Now I'm adding spice and like this is now, you know.
Yeah, but that changes things. All those extra little things make a
Hey, hey,
difference.
hey! See, I woke you up. You were like, I'm leaving in five
I
minutes.
have
No,
a headache.
see?
I really have a
Mm,
headache. I
now
gotta
you
go.
feel better. You sound like you feel better. I know what I'm doing. See. Anyway, so now that you know that little nuance, you give him a shot.
I would say that that is
Ooh, let me
something
find
that
out.
I would say that that could be something you can negotiate and talk about. It would also depend on what does he mean by he's not financially secure, right? So all those little things, that is definitely a discussion that can be had. And I do know of people who have, had arrangements like that. But also I do know of situations where it was that the man was working towards something. And in the meantime, the woman was buffering the situation with her, finances. So there's all kinds of agreements that can be made depending on the details and the circumstance. So I would agree with that. But just see, you threw me off because you just threw out she's older, and it's like, wait a minute. So I got to negotiate because I'm a little older now, and I have to
Right. Right.
carry my own weight. Like, wait a minute, so that was how it was initially presented. So you definitely heard a change in my voice. Like, nah, I'm not feeling that at all. I don't like that. But this changes things because that's real. That's a little bit more realistic too, to kind of get behind. And it also depends on the woman because some women are, I'm just not, that wouldn't work for me because I'm just not going to work. Like I don't want to be the breadwinner. I don't want to be the one carrying the majority of the burden. So it would depend on the woman. It would depend on the situation. And if that works and he's a good guy and like, yeah, I would say okay.
I'd have to agree. My response would be something similar. I think that oftentimes women who wouldn't agree to something like that are looking at it from what should a man do, not what would work for us. Um, where would we go? Where am I going individually like that? But I agree. I would agree as well with Amber.
Yeah, and so I think that ties into what we were talking about earlier, and I think it would be important for, and I'm glad you guys shared your perspective. I think it's important for women to have that conversation with themselves that um, it may be an uncomfortable reality, but it may be a situation where certain deals and negotiations you might need to make in order to get the other things that you want. And I think it's a matter of being prepared to have that conversation with a man and with yourself, so that the pool is larger for yourself.
I would say that it changes things, though, Brother Nasir. If a man is coming, he's coming into this situation from a different lens. Not that he's building and he's currently in this financial situation, but that it's like, well, you got kids, and like if he's coming from a negative perspective of you have to earn your way into this relation, into this marriage, like cutting a deal in that way, where it's just like, in order for me to want to marry you, you would have to do X, Y, and Z. It's almost like some men, right? And I don't know if you've ever come across this, but some men who are currently married and they're looking for second wives, and they kind of want the second wife to already have everything established, so he's not responsible for her in that way,
But
right?
I think, like, then we can look back at what Brother Hosh was talking about the way we view things like that. Because as a woman, you can take that in your head and you can turn it around. It's about a man looking at things, looking at the complete picture, planning things from start to finish, looking at everything that he would be responsible for. And so it's up to how you look at it as well too.
So then that's my question. So a man is married. Man says to you, look, I can take care of my family, and I can, contribute this amount per month, but I can't do 100%. Is that a conversation you entertain?
Personally, yes. It depends. I'm more interested in where you stand Islamically. If it makes sense Islamically, if you're on point Islamically, and it makes sense with the way things line up in my life, and it's just like a conversation that's like, okay, that makes sense. I can do that. Then yeah.
Amber, I can see through your profile picture. Something is going on. I can sense it.
So
I can sense it.
No, I'm just listening.
No, oh, see that? Oh, I'm just listening. I know. This is what I do. Go ahead. What's going through your mind?
No. I think it would depend on many different factors, but I do. So there's this thing, and I can't be on for too much longer, but there is this thing. It depends on the profile of the man that we're talking about. So if we're assuming that this guy is a stand-up guy, he's a, just to play into the verbiage earlier, he's a high value man, right?
I'm
And
telling how you said it.
he's a high value man, right? That would be a different kind of talk. And where I'm at right now in my life, currently, I would be open to the conversation, but I would also have it wouldn't be a thing where it's like the man has the only bargaining chips, right? Where he's just the one calling, like he's just saying it's this or it's nothing, because I don't really think that that's a marriage. And I don't really think that personally for me, that's not something I would sign up for, where the man is just kind of looking at me as this kind of extra in the movie almost, because I would also be a wife with the same status and the same position. So while I am a second wife, I'm not less than a wife, and so I would not play that role. I would not even start on that foot, because I think that's setting the bar too low, and I also feel like that's setting the bar where um it's not realistic to follow up down the line, because some women and men will say just about anything, they get what they want in the beginning, but then things start to change. You get into that relationship, you're seeing how things are playing out, you're maybe have a baby or whatever, and then you're like, no, I deserve the same thing. So then you change. So I don't believe anybody should sign up for something today that they can't sustain in the long run, or at least project down the line that 2 3 years, 10 years down the line, I can keep this up. Yeah, I'm going to keep working and hustling, and I'm going to keep being the one that bring in all the money, and I'm just going to keep being the wife to this man part-time, but yet I'm not even getting the benefit of being a wife to him to a certain capacity. That personally for me, I have to. So this goes back to your comment about hard truths and being honest with yourself. I'm a realist. I like to be real, and I'm also not ever going to If that counts me out of certain things, I would rather that than to lie to myself or the person and to sign up for something that I know I'm not going to be okay with down the line. I just wouldn't do it. I would rather say, all right, this isn't going to work and opt out of potentially a good situation, but I would have to believe that there's something else better for me that fits me also.
I like.
So while that could be a conversation that I would encourage women to have, I would also encourage them, be real with yourself. Do not just be so thirsty to sign up to marry this guy that you're saying things and agreeing to things initially that you know you don't really believe and that you know you can't sustain over a long time. Because is that going to be his fault when you decide to be upset and then you call him to account for it? He's going to be like, well, wait a minute. I told you what my situation was up front. You agreed and now you're mad. That's not fair. It's not mature and it's not responsible. So then what are you looking at? A divorce or a turmoil and chaos in your marriage because you lied? So no, be real with yourself. And I'm going to be real with myself. And I know that men are going to hear this, whatever. I'm just going to be honest that I will never sign up for something that I know I couldn't keep up or sustain for the long haul.
Yeah, that's wise. I think the point that I wanted to hear, and the point that I wanted um, sisters to hear, is that be open to the conversation
Definitely.
and embrace the reality, that um, that's a part of the pool that is in front of you as well. And
Mhm.
that may be a pool that's worth looking at as well, right? Be open to having to potentially negotiate, because I can tell you, in the work that I do, oftentimes I get sisters from the very beginning. No, I'm not striking any deal. No, I'm not. I'm not entertaining polygyny. No, absolutely not. Without even acknowledging or hearing the type of brother that's in front of them,
Yeah.
right? That I'm presenting to them.
Hmm.
It's just a quick no, quick no. And I think for brothers, when we see that and hear that, it's like, and again, this may come off uncomfortable some, but it's like it's not in touch with reality.
Yeah,
It's really,
I would agree
it's
with
really
that.
not.
I would agree with that. I definitely would say be open to the conversation. And I also would say be open to negotiation because negotiation could be a healthy thing. It really could be, whether it's a man, whether it's polygyny or it's not, because you need to still negotiate even if it's a single man. Like
Yeah.
there's things because life circumstances, like we spoke about different things in regards to parenting, and like there's always going to be something to bring to the table to really figure out if this is a good fit for the two of you. Like if this works for you, if this works for me, if we can meet in the middle and this works for us, as a couple, as a family. So definitely don't cut yourself off at the foot and say, I'm just not going to even entertain the idea. Yeah, entertain the idea, but also go in there with a realistic um, point of view or perspective. Like be honest. Be honest and be upfront. And I know that we're going to have this discussion at some point, and so I'm going to hold you to it. Definitely to talk about self advocacy, because for women, in a lot of cases, especially if they're getting up there in age, we tend to feel, not feel, but we tend to position ourselves a without advocating for the things that we really need and we would like to see in our relationships. And so then we come in it without being genuine and authentic. And again, like I said, that can present problems down the line because while the man was being open and upfront, he's like, this is my situation, and you signed up for it. So then that leaves you nowhere when you decide to change course midway.
100%, and I'm up for that conversation on any live. I'm a firm advocate of sisters being assertive. Um, I'm an advocate of them getting in the right mindset, so that way their assertiveness is articulating and setting boundaries that are constructive and functional, right? That's strategic, right? Because that's the thing. I think we have to acknowledge that the market that women are choosing to be in, because you don't have to choose to get married, but the reality is the market that you're choosing to be in has certain realities that come with it, whether we like it or not. So how do you be strategic in that market and be assertive, and set the boundaries and get the best deal you can get? That to me is a part of my work, and I think a lot of times, um, I find that this is going to be harsh. I find that some sisters are very delusional when it comes to this, delusional in terms of the marriage market. Now, other aspects of their life, they may be on point, they're killing it. But when it comes to the marriage market and understanding men and how men think, um, they're missing the mark. So that's why this part came up and asked the question, because I want sisters to have the conversation. Trust yourself enough that you can have the conversation and trust the support system that you built that's going to give you the honest feedback on that conversation you have with a brother. But those are my thoughts. I know you have to go. You guys want to say any parting words before we wrap up?
Brianna, you unmiked, but we can't hear you.
Oh, I was just waiting for one of you to speak first, but I think these conversations are so very important. A lot of these things we talked about are things that I'm currently dealing with in my own life right now. To get different perspectives is always something that I'm looking for. So there are people out there looking for this information and these perspectives. So these conversations are always important.
I would like to say that just as much as these conversations are important, that we need to be open to hearing them and open to accepting the painful, sometimes painful, hard truths. Because when we can take a step back and we can look in the mirror, it only puts us, it's actually only for our benefit, because it puts us in a better position to then see what it is that we need to work on and then get to work on it. And that's a power move.
It is.
But staying in the denial and in the delusion does not push your life forward. It doesn't help you. And unfortunately, what it does do is keep you at the bottom of the drain, circling around time after time, relationship after relationship, and nothing ever changes. So be open to these discussions, no matter how difficult it is to hear. And even if you want to push back on some of the perspectives and ideas, that's healthy too. But at least be open to hearing it and be open to taking a look within and seeing, hey, do some of these things fit me? And what can I do about it? And also be open to seeking out help, getting the help, seeking out the different means to help along the process. When I first started out, I believed I was a person I could do it all on my own. I bought every book and I thought that I can just heal myself. And I really believed that. I was like, whatever they can do, I can do better. And I think there's a place for that in life. But that's just my personality. I've always believed that if somebody can do something, I can do it too. And I like to master and perfect things. So I wanted to perfect this, but there was a part in my journey that I realized I can't do this on my own. And there are people who have come before me, and there are people who are better equipped, and there are people that Allah has blessed with the knowledge and information to be able to assist me. And so why not reach out to those people and invest in myself? And that's a higher level of healing, when you start to believe that you're worthy of your own investment. When you can take your money and take your resources and take your time and the energy that it's going to take to push yourself over that wall and get the help that you need. So yeah, be open.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, nice segue. For those of you that are interested and need help with regulating your emotions, so that you can get better with yourself, others, or relationships or life, you can always reach out for a session. If you're interested in getting married, I do matchmaking, so reach out as well. Actually, before you guys go, Amber and Brianna, where can people reach you both at?
You can reach me on Instagram at this same tag, Brianna Aaliyah. I'm also a photographer, so if you go to Brianna Aaliyah, you should find all my links there.
Amber?
I just recently launched my Timeless Muslima podcast channel on YouTube, so you can find me there. And you can also find me on Instagram at timeless.muslima. And also on Clubhouse, my handle, I believe, is the same. It's no dot, though. It's just Timeless Muslima LLC.
Okay. With that, I'll stop. And the only message that I have for everyone, for the sisters that are watching, don't believe the narrative that all brothers are not interested in divorcees with children. Don't believe that narrative. Don't repeat that narrative, right? And don't entertain discussions or profiles where that is the narrative that's being articulated. Is that a reality for some men? Yes, and that's their perspective. They have a right for whatever reason, but that doesn't have to be the type of men you entertain and the narratives that you listen to. You control what narratives you allow to consume. I suggest you consume narratives from men that are open to and see value in women that are divorcees with children. With that, we will have another discussion, inshallah. If not next week, soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam.